Hello, everyone. Good morning, everyone, and good wherever you are. Good, maybe sometimes good early morning, or good afternoon, or wherever. But for me, it is good now. Thank you very much, everyone, joining in. This is Tibetan Buddhist Society of Canberra's regular Sunday morning practice of calm, abiding meditation, followed by a talk on these days on the series on the Buddhist insight, causes of sanity. So we're going to do the first short prayers to tune up the mind, put in the right frame, in a very reflective, devoted manner of recollecting the qualities of our ability to tune our mind in a very wakeful state, like the Buddha mind, that all lie within us, through the whatever teachings we have understood, the techniques, how to bring the awakening and luminosity of the mind to shine within, with the strong benefit of strong connection with the living tradition and Sangha. So we call refuge, these three, refuge in the Buddha, the Dharma, the Sangha. The Buddha really is ultimately your awakened mind. But relatively, the historical Buddha's amazing life and teachings. And the Dharma is the actual messages and the teachings of the Buddha that inspires us, that makes our mind to see not only of its luminosity, but clearly how everything is, not but just what your opinion is about. Other than that, nothing really matters most. So you just have to know how to mind your opinions cognitively. And any person who helps you to boost these three is this, that you have strong connection to Sangha, which we definitely have, very strong living tradition of Sangha to rejoice and be connected to. So I'll recite the refuge prayer, followed by the generation of the ultimate bodhicitta, the ultimate wish to benefit all sentient beings by us having a grip over our own mind. And therefore being able to, we can definitely benefit others only if we have understanding of our own mind, realization of our own mind, and lack of true identity called white or black or male or person wearing this particular title, that particular title. When we do not get attached to this identity and small highs and lows of illusory life, we don't need to be associated and attached to those experiences, let alone emotional issues. Then we can definitely empathize those who don't, and practice loving kindness, compassion, and equanimity to everyone, those who don't have the skill to have the Dharma. So therefore I'm going to chant the four immeasurables also. So those of you who know, please do the same. Thank you, everyone. Oyenda Buddha Dhamma Sangha Acharya Vichara Lajama Bhavacha Ajendala Acharya Vada Vajravi and Buddha Dhamma Sangha Acharya Vichara Lajama Bhavacha Ajendala Acharya Vada Vajravi and Buddha Dhamma Sangha Acharya Vichara Lajama Bhavacha Ajendala Acharya Vada Vajravi happiness, and the cause of happiness. May they be free from suffering, and the cause of suffering. May they never from the happiness that no suffering. May they dwell equanimity, free from attachment and aversion to those near and far. May hobbies happiness and the cause of happiness. May they be free from suffering, and the cause of suffering. May they never part from the happiness that knows no suffering. May they dwell equanimity, free from attachment and aversion to those near and far. May hobbies happiness and the cause of happiness. May they be free from suffering, and the cause of suffering. May they never from the happiness that knows no suffering. May they dwell equanimity, free from attachment and aversion to the near and far. So we will do our meditation in 3 sections. I will lead you a few minutes before each part. Most important part is you should be calmly sitting in a correct meditation posture, securing your space so you have nothing else going on, that your mind and body is required to be attended to, but simply, calmly, one-pointedly, during this first slot, just observe consciously in the correct posture of the body in meditation. Observe the stillness of your whole posture while positioning it correct from the feet all the way to the top of the crown, which you consciously scan and check and correct and maintain the posture as a conscious act of mindfulness while you're sitting still, but you're actually positioning the body You are scanning upwards all the way to the crown, and then slowly reverse the scanning. Check and correct and adjust a little bit and improve the posture. In this way, continue to remain mindfully engaged, calmly keeping the position of the body, and knowing this will harmonize and reconstitute all the subtle elements in the body. And as you check the posture, detect any correct postures or incorrect ones, slowly, gently correct them, and then feel very peaceful and calm and tranquil in consciously observing the posture. About good 2 to 3 minutes each bout of effort, and then take a little mini break. Otherwise, keep scanning the body one-pointedly without thinking of anything or doing anything, but actively positioning the mindfulness of the posture. With eyes half open, lips and teeth left natural, chin slightly tucked in, straight back, balanced shoulder, stomach muscle slightly pulled back, elbows balanced as are the shoulders. And hold the vigil to sit in complete stillness and silence. maintaining the good posture of one pointedly. Now let your mind fix your attention in following the in-breath. Mindfully inhale, do know you're inhaling, see the positive energy that comes in white light, feel inspired, and then as you stay with the permeation of breath and lungs, do the spreading and flooding of the body with the oxygen and the blood streaming. See, feel, know its inundation through the whole body, rejuvenating your body and mind. And then as you exhale, just as well, you let go the carbon. With that, you knowingly let go this tiredness, tension, scatteredness, and any difficulties. When on out breath, feel relieved. So in this way, do each round of breath, what we call each qualified round of breath, do as many rounds as possible without losing the count. Forward, at the end of each good exhalation, count that as 1, and all the way, say, up to 50 or whatever number you can best perform. If distracted, lose the count. Stay calm and take a conscious mini break and start again counting from 1. Otherwise, keep continuing and enjoy the mindfulness of following each round of breath, counting them without losing. And this can greatly cause a lot of stillness and peace and tranquility in the mind as you exercise joyous effort in doing this without any touch of boredom or laziness, scatteredness, by fixing your attention one pointedly. keeping the good mindfulness of the good posture. Now, I suggest you fix your attention to the super qualified attention, awareness, mindfulness, all combined in following the round breath. And then at the end of each super qualified round of breath, at the end of exhalation, you count the high point of number like 50, and then you count reverse. After each round finish at the end of exhalation, you count 49, and the next one, 48, and 47, not just becoming enchanted with the counting, but also have the super qualified awareness of the incoming breath, its benefit, its function, its mode of passage, and how it resuscitates your deep, blissful attention. Relishing all of that mindfully, you rejoicingly then do the reverse counting without losing the count. Even should you lose the count and become aware of it, become just as aware of just another awareness of something, and do not let it agitate you, and do not let yourself become discouraged, but simply enchanted by the awareness of noticing that as much as an awareness of every count. So in this way, try to use the combined effort of calm abiding with a deeper bit touch of insight in fixing your attention one pointedly on the counting reverse many super qualified rounds of breath. Position of So thank you, everyone. Once again, those of you who have been doing the meditation in the last 45 minutes, that's calm, abiding meditation, important, very important practice. So now we have a talk. The theme of this talk is Buddhist insights and the causes of sanity. And that's the theme. But idea of this session is also to make a little bit more interactive to all Facebook audience as well as the Zoom audience. So anyone who has any question or comments, I will try to see them, or questions, I'll try to incorporate in this talk. So please feel free. So welcome everyone. I can see quite a few familiar faces in the Zoom, as well as some in the Facebook. Everybody, welcome. Thank you for joining us. The idea of this having any sense of sanity is very difficult in this very, very materialistically driven, individualistically focused, and very, very competitive, perfectionist world that expects so much, and by this pushing those ideas, and of course those things are probably causes of insanity. Individualism, first of all, perfectionism, idealism, and materialism, and competitiveness. These things are the causes of driving people to insanity. So that's why we have to look at what are the fundamentally enlightening Buddhist insights that we can better the world, better our individual life and our world, so that we learn to be more humanistic instead of being individualistic. We become more accepting of oneself, let alone others, the best they can be or best they're trying, rather than comparing negatively to each other. And don't try to be very perfect, because this world is not full of perfect people. This world is full of deluded sentient beings who are born with the baggage of lot of karma from the past. On top of that, whatever one has added in recent decades. So therefore, to idealize each other to be perfect is the cause of all this intolerance and zero tolerance. So I think the Buddha was so right from the very beginning, that his meditation gave him the insight that the world is basically unsatisfactory by nature. It's like saying the fire by nature is burning, and so to try to have people who later in society say, we want fire to be wet. We want the fire to be wet, and complaining the fire is hot is completely completely insane. So that's why it is important to get these points correct in our mind, because when we talk about intolerance, because while tolerance is highly respected as a virtue, but hardly it is any place where tolerance is accommodated. They almost say zero tolerance. When you go to the doctor's room, there's a big screen saying people who behave this way will not be tolerated, or they'll be kicked out, whatever. So that kind of very, very unaccommodating, they don't realize how sick or how depressed or how difficult people's life might be in coming there for help, and they don't want to accommodate anyone. They want everybody to be perfect to come through the door. Who would come through the door anyway if they're so perfect, and their life is so perfect? Even in society, they say we can't have people like that in our all that kind of very, very exclusive Buddhism, meaning the awakened, when the heart is completely awakened, then we are able to incorporate others who are unlike us, who may have just as many as flaws as we ourselves have. But we don't see our flaws. We only see other people's flaws, and then we think we don't have such people among our midst, as we don't have our own flaws. We have plenty of flaws, and the flawless person and human being is never found. So therefore, in Buddhism, we have to accept people with flaws, people with karma, people with problems, people with the personality problems. And it is them we have to practice tolerance with. It is them who we have to practice kindness. It is them with whom we can be of some use, whether you are a professional, as a doctor, or nurses, or social worker, or carer, or just bystander. If somebody is really, really losing his mind doing something, what can we do to de-escalate their problem by not overreacting to the person? How can we help to calm his mind and his situation without us overreacting as if he was doing it deliberately to upset our perfect world? I mean, if your world is perfect, you shouldn't be disturbable. If you're so perfect, you shouldn't be so disturbable, so vulnerable. So I think we have one question from our Don, who sent an email quite a while ago. We didn't get to answer before about Buddhist perspective on equanimity, because it's very relevant to how do we practice equanimity in relation to Buddhist insight as a sane way of doing. Because equanimity, if you practice equanimity, people might misunderstand it as a practice of negligence, or practice of avoidance, or practice of you couldn't be bothered, it's not my problem type of thing. So, because the idea of renunciation in Buddhism can be misunderstood also as equanimity. You're renouncing something, and so because of that you don't make any effort. But in Buddhism, the equanimity is a lot more higher level than mere avoidance or mere I would say indifference. Equanimity have to be in Buddhism in the four immeasurables. Equanimity is one of the four immeasurables. Of the four, equanimity is the highest, the last. That's why equanimity is treated as the fourth. Reason is because to practice genuine equanimity, immeasurable equanimity, is much harder than to practice compassion. So that means equanimity has to have compassion, loving kindness, and joyfulness as a substance, as the outer form of expression of equanimity, but deep down you need to have compassion. Compassion for the object to whom you're practicing equanimity to. That is usually, say, someone you see their problems and you see their sufferings, and instead of reacting to them, you are practicing equanimity, because their suffering and their problem is the object. You have to practice compassion too. If you don't maintain your equanimity, you couldn't practice compassion. You would overreact. You will. Instead of helping the person's problem, you can make it worse if you don't have the equanimity. So therefore, without compassion, there is no equanimity. And at the same time, equanimity has to be with loving kindness, with wishing the other to be happy by yourself restraining from overreacting, not because you have no opinions to react with, but you know that this will not add to his happiness, but actually will exacerbate the lack of happiness they are already suffering. And therefore, your loving kindness is actually making you to not react or overreact, and therefore practicing equanimity. So equanimity has to be motivated by the loving kindness and compassion. Loving kindness is wishing the other to be happy and find the causes of happiness. And their causes of happiness might be your equanimity, your calmness, your sort of gentleness, that you didn't overreact. You didn't lose your temper. You control your mind when you need to control your mind. Out of compassion, out of loving kindness, you practice equanimity, But a lot of people practice equanimity with some kind of resentment deep down. Deep down, they're very resentful, what they call passive aggression. So some people practice equanimity, but outwardly very, very peaceful. But deep down, they are hating you like anything. So there are a lot of people wear that kind of face. Outwardly, they don't do anything. They're just impartial. But deep down, they are seething with anger. So equanimity is fraught with the problem if it doesn't have loving kindness or compassion. And if you do have loving kindness and compassion, means you see that all sentient beings have karma and have many things they don't know they are going through, let alone what is caused by. So they're totally ignorant of their own predicament, let alone the consequences or effect they may have to other people. Now, if you have that kind of mind, you say, poor thing, they don't even know what they're doing. And as a result of that, you'll be able to be there in their shoes, and therefore your compassion for the other empowers you to practice equanimity, and that equanimity is compassionate equanimity. It's not passive aggression. So, on top of that, you are also generating loving kindness. May my equanimity be a cause, or at least a small cause, for their happiness. It's because you really want your self-control to become a small cause for them to give a breathing space. Because people usually say, give me some space, and your equanimity is you're giving them some space. Giving them the space by not overreacting to them. Now, when you have this skill to practice self-control, motivated by compassion for the other person's suffering, and wishing that what you do is actually allaying some of the suffering and maybe promote a little bit of hope in their mind. So when you are motivated altruistically with those two intentions, loving kindness, compassion, then you are not going to be you're not going to practice equanimity with a very, very cold face. You're going to practice equanimity with joyful face. That's the joyfulness. You're actually happy that you can self-control where you need to be controlled, where the other is quite obvious example who has lost their self-control. So you're trying to hold a balance that you seem to have a little bit of extra advantage, to have a merit, to not to react like them. As a result of that, see, that's what Buddhist practice is. You practice tolerance. You practice tolerance when somebody is losing their grip, and you are able to make sure that you don't jump with them into the ditch. You try to lend a hand, if possible, for them to get out of that. And if you can pull them up, don't you think your face will be delighted? Yes, you'll be on the top of the moon. I rescue somebody who was falling down and I pull them up. So joyfulness, without the first three, I would say, immeasurable: loving kindness, joyfulness, and compassion, you cannot practice equanimity. Equanimity is put as the fourth of the four immeasurables. Not because it's the least important, but it's the hardest. Hardest because people who do pretend to practice equanimity, they think that, like Shantideva says, when such and such when people behave this way, people let me act like a wood piece of a log. What does it mean? After discussing all those chapters, he give up at the end, become a log and doesn't care. No, it can't be that. He's bodhisattva, fairly evolved bodhisattva, advocating generosity and self-discipline and patience and all of that. He wouldn't say practice indifference and ignore them completely and with kind of passive aggression. No, when he said at that time, let me become a log, which means that at that time let me not be distracted by self-importance. So equanimity has a almost like semi-selflessness of almost what do you call, sacrificing your own skin, so to speak, and controlling your emotion so that you do not get agitated or instigated by other person's suffering or difficulties, whatever, knowing that they too will all pass, knowing these very circumstances pass, because a Buddhist person who practices equanimity knows everything is impermanent. Buddha said, if you can remember and do impermanent things will change dramatically. So you just have to hold a couple of rounds of breath and not react to it. And by that time, if you're doing equanimity with loving kindness, compassion, joyfulness, then you will have equanimity. Otherwise, no equanimity. It's just a cold face and just passive aggression and self-righteousness. Oh, I didn't say a thing. He was like that, but I didn't say a thing. But subsequently, one is seething with anger day after day. So what's the benefit? Got a lot of people. On the spot, they didn't react anything, but deep down they're seething, and day after day they're holding pent-up feelings. So the resentment occurs as a lack of equanimity there and then when one is greatly warranted. So that's why it is important, isn't it, to consider how unsatisfactory the situation is without your loving kindness, compassion, and equanimity. And how could you now? How could you mediate, or how could you remedy the unsatisfactory situation? Because Buddha says all sufferings are cause of your compassion. Cause of your compassion. Suffering is cause of your compassion. So someone who is instigating you is cause of your tolerance. They may look unsatisfactory. They may look like someone you don't want to work with, but you need to. You will run away from him. You will meet another one just like them somewhere else. So you wouldn't be able to run very far in samsara. People that are unlike that, from your family to your work colleagues to wherever or whatever, you will always meet. The water is always wet wherever you go. Fire is always burning wherever you go. Sentient beings always unsatisfactory when you go. But to the Buddha, sentient beings are not unsatisfactory. Sentient beings are objects of pity. They are they're benefactor of his compassion. They're benefactor of his loving kindness and equanimity. So the Buddhist person who has a Buddhist kind of insight should not make a moan and groan about sentient beings and people and their behaviors, but they should take refuge in the Dharma and how not to be how dare you do this to me type of thing. We should say, how dare you think like that about sentient beings? You should think like that. How dare you think about that to sentient beings? Aren't you going to take refuge in not resorting to this tit for tat kind of a very impatient materialistic society? Yeah, so you need to, if we're not meant to be very materialistic, tit for tat, when we have to become spiritual. What does spirit means? We have to go in the light within us, the light within us. When you go in your good soft place in your heart, you have to find that. And whether that's a prayer or whether there's a bit of reflection or whatever, when you get to that, it completely changes perspective of the reality. The reality didn't persist as it is, as it appears. Nothing lasts. As long as you do not keep playing back your mind. Most people's mind is playing back those storylines in their head, and even though the thing came and went very fast, and they just still are not have moved an inch from that place. So equanimity is just meditating these two will pass, as long as I don't subscribe with wrong intention. This is impermanent. This doesn't exist from its own side. As long as I don't clap with the other hand, it wouldn't make any clap, no matter how big a hand the other person push the hand towards me. If I don't put mine, it wouldn't clap. So I need to know how to practice self-control. When you are able to practice control your thoughts and your words and your feelings and emotions, you basically cover the ground. Whole earth is covered. You don't have to change the other person, because you're changing your thought and attitude, behavior changes the perception of the other in no time. Being able to reconstitute your own mind and metacognitively, seeing that you are actually see your own mind, what you're doing, what it may do, what it can do something to perpetuate and worsen it in many times worse than it is now. You tend to foresee that. A Buddhist person who has insight is not tolerant because they want to be seen as virtuous or pious in the eyes of people. That's not the purpose. If person is practicing tolerance with that intention, it's already bad. They should practice tolerance with the intention that if I practice this, it will exhaust my own negative karma and vulnerability in not being able to handle people like this as a weakness of myself, and also it will destroy the negative karma they have instigated with for a good cause to purify my own. And as a result of that, we don't have animosity to the other unsatisfactory sentient being. We actually have compassion to the unsatisfactory sentient being. And as a result of that, we are practicing the very sane, causes of sanity. Means we're happy. How many times did you respond to something, and after half an hour you're really happy the way you responded? It's usually very calm and compassionate decisions. But if you did a really reactive, childish, erratic, and like that, you thought you were doing the right thing, you had to do it, but minutes later you realize, how did I lose myself to that? And then subsequently you have a big trailer full of garbage. But it was difficult, but where you did control your mind and your thoughts and your emotions, and maybe you were also saying little mantras while you're witnessing the situation. You just say, Om Mani Padme Hum, or may there be peace, or whatever you may practice. It was hard for a few moments, but actually it cleared the air, and subsequently you feel, I'm so glad I didn't lose myself to that. And you will feel, wow. Then you do that once, you do it twice. Next time you will have ability to practice equanimity when those things happen. Okay, another question here. What happens if you're about to get wiped out, though? Yeah. Well, probably we need of course, you could, if you've been hanging in there with a lot of resentment, you will feel that. So that's why it is good not to keep up those kind of things that will push you almost at the precipice end that you will fall. So you should do your daily meditation practices so that you actually do not make your floors very, very slippery. You have to mop those floors regularly and dry them, and then you wouldn't be slippery, because otherwise you have all these things left all over the place, and then it's very dangerous. And smallest things can make you to slip and wipe you out. Why things are the brink of wiping out? Because we are not practicing the small things regularly. That doesn't boost our emotional formidability and merit and intelligence that actually empowers us to overcome overcome the difficulties or prevent those difficulties. When you are doing your daily prayer, in the prayer you actually forgive them. You apologize you're on something and you forgive the others. You ask the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas to witness yourself. And you really mean it very well, you know. You don't have any difficulty that you did very well. So, but if you're not formally engaging into practices and knowledges and reflections and so on, yeah, then you have a lot of these pent-up feelings that makes you very, very easy to be wiped out by something that triggers, you know. You can see 2 or 3 people can become exposed to the same thing. One got wiped out, then the other one didn't get wiped out. Other one acted very, very gallantly, very beautifully, you know. So, you know, so the choice could be, the outer condition might be identical to the 3 people, but one, we can call them A, B, C, or we can call them small-minded, you know, middle-minded, and maybe high-minded. Small-minded person always thinks, why did he do this to me? You know, and straight away it's all about me, and he or she then adds up, you know, compile it up what they were going through yesterday or a few years ago. This keeps happening to me all the time. I can't put up with this, and there you go. You lose the control there. Small-minded people say, why is he doing to me? The middle-minded is the practitioner, at least a beginner practitioner. Beginner practitioner, oh, why does that person does it anyway, poor thing? You know, it's not so much what he's doing to us, but why he does it in the first place. So you try to see the problem not in you, by him, but the problem that they have, and use it as object of compassion, rather than poor me. The beginner practitioner thinks, poor me. The middle practitioner thinks, poor him. You know. As a result of that, it's not what they did to you, but what they are doing to themselves. Are they aware? See? So that's the difference. The person, poor me, is about to be wiped out, you know. You know, this has happened to me again. This happened to me. Oh, I can't stand up these people in my life. You know, then you think they're all against you. You think all the colleagues are like that against you. You think all the opposite gender are like that to you. People think also they always lump people together, you know, that as if everybody is against them. So that's what we need to take refuge. We need to practice Dharma. We need to listen to the Dharma. We need to read. We need to reflect and compare those teachings, relevance, and usefulness in everyday life situations. The moment you're able to do that, you're not at the brink of being wiped out by the slightest kind of agitation. And when you're able to think as the middle person who thinks, oh, what's happening? Why is it happening to him? Even though he says this and that and does this to me, but it's not about really me. But why does it do in the first place, poor thing? Then your focus is what you can do to it rather than what it did to you. It's very powerful, refuge. Refuge is, you know, what you can do to reduce the suffering. Buddha says you have to practice compassion. Okay, you practice compassion when somebody is very, 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 very volatile. And you don't, we have people always say, we can't have such people in our group, they say. Amazing, they're very un-Buddhist. You know, I mean, you should have a little island to become Buddhist island. You know, then have all the perfect people go and live a perfect island, who don't have any karmic problem, who don't have emotional problem, who don't have any health problem, who don't have any financial problem, who don't have any relationship problem, who don't have any, you know, all this problem, and we want all these perfect people. You know. When I hear people say that, I say, what are you talking about? You know, the samsara is full of all these people who are professional. They're all helping the unsatisfactory people, including them. All these people train 20, 30 years so that they can help each other and not to reject each other. So that's why it's very important that if a very experienced nurse or doctor, they see the person who is injured totally differently than the person who were involved with getting injured each other in the street, for instance. Because the nurse or doctor straight away look at the patient and what's happening to him. But whereas other people who's not caring for the other person, they say, why is doing this to me in front of my yard? Why are they fighting in front of my yard? These two people get injured, and they, instead of thinking why these people got injured, they think why they're doing this right next to my street, they call it. But police or paramedic comes, they are not concerned about whose street or whose yard. They are concerned about who they have to take care of straight away. It's like that, people who are trained. So we're talking about if one has some bit of sanity, we should be focused on the objects, the problem or suffering, and then we, as a subject, probably one who has a bit of touch of sanity, can then not overreact, idealize the other person, and be not being perfectionist, but try to be whatever we can. And even practicing compassion for the others is quite traumatizing, quite traumatic, and also it involves. I usually say these people who have stress are because they care so much, Those who don't care probably don't care. That's it. They have no stress because they don't care anybody. So usually the mothers and your grandmothers, they have stress because they're all concerned about you. And so therefore, if we have a little bit of a stress, bodhisattvas are stress case. The bodhisattvas have taken the vow to be stressed, but for the sake of others. We have so much stress anyway, even just thinking for this finite sentient being. But usually it's not so much, not so productive. And the person of the third kind, who no longer thinks about what they did to me or what they doing to themselves, but what appears to be happening to that, he sees that as not something that is permanent fixture. There isn't anything. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So when you're able to heighten the quality of your mind, and not from poor me to poor him, but from the point of view how everything is interdependent, the middle way or whatever teaching, you have to understand what's happening not as something independently happening to himself. Just as we switch from poor me to the poor them point of view, we see it differently. So it's totally dependent on what we think about it rather than what actually it is. So it's totally dependent on the opinion of us. Because of that, you can see the thing is totally empty of inherently existing reality. But why it's not? Is it not happening? It's happening, but it's not permanent. Firstly, it's not permanent. Secondly, it's not independently existing. So it's not permanent, which means impermanent. So it's not independently, that means dependently existing. So if that is impermanent and it's dependent existing, it is not inherently existing. Good. So then you definitely have the ability to look from the middle way, of course, with altruism. Of course, first, the second mind also, the middle mind is also quite altruistic, or poor thing, what's happening to him or her. So there is a very compassionate mind in the middle way mind too. But this is more like an ultimate bodhicitta, thinking that the highest point of mind sees all things in an aerial point of view. He sees it from the aerial, from universal loving kindness, compassion point of view. So he thinks on a relative level why the two people's sufferings appears differently to individuals, but how in reality both are confused in thinking and blaming and blaming each other, and then not able to reduce any of the suffering. But from the point of view of the enlightened mind, ultimately there is no truly existing suffering or problem. The only suffering there is because both of them are grasping to their opinions as wrong views, as correct views, and ignorance as correct view, and they're completely mistaken. So they both are equally deluded. And because of that, they are nevertheless, these are both dependently originated. Dependently originated means something doesn't happen unless it has another cause. All these things has a how that which one cause and one effect affects others are also not independently of that happening. It totally depends on, like there may be three of us maybe contract the COVID-19, okay? 3 of us may contract COVID-19. And if you look at the statistics, how many people recover from the COVID-19 is quite high, So why? Because it's not because people who didn't contract the COVID-19, they did, but they have got very good medical condition. They don't have extreme medical condition, they're not very old, or they took all the precautions, and as soon as they tested positive, they took all the treatment, and they socially distanced themselves, and so on and so forth, and they recovered in a matter of days. Others who are physically and medical lot of conditions, they just don't need much. So therefore, COVID-19 is not inherently existing cause of death, but it can be an instrument that can trigger someone's ill health or death because COVID-19 itself doesn't kill anybody. COVID-19 in the water doesn't kill anybody. COVID-19 in the air doesn't kill anybody. COVID-19 on the table doesn't kill the table. So COVID-19 doesn't kill all surfaces. So COVID-19 is not inherently existing and destroy over all material things, because it falls on the table should disintegrate. It falls onto a bench top, it should disintegrate. No, it's not like that. Yeah, so that shows everything is dependent and impermanent. If you take the right medication and treatment, yeah, soon the person proved positive only 5 days ago. After 3 days of medication, he's proved negative. So you see, so you can see even those conditions impermanent. So nothing is truly independently, let alone inherently existing thing. When you're able to think like that, it's not talking about what is real and what is unreal. We're talking about but what is anything for long? How long is your coffee just served in the restaurant is going to be drinkable coffee? Pretty soon. In the first 3 minutes, as soon as you're served, and after that there wouldn't be any coffee. Let alone, firstly it's get cold. Secondly, it doesn't look like coffee, and then you realize how. So how long is coffee satisfactory coffee? Yeah, and very unsatisfactory. Yeah, but for the coffee itself is neither satisfactory nor unsatisfactory from its own side. Coffee is quite equanimous, whether it stays in the cup or goes through you. Doesn't really matter. It's probably happy with stay in the cup. Doesn't have to go through your gut. So if you look at that, all phenomena are only dependent on what it is, not from its own side, what other people think it is, Yeah, so because of that, it is very important that when we practice Buddhist teachings, it is not talking about just doing ritual and prayer things, but which is very enlightening, which is very, 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 very awakening, which is really, it just totally awakens your conscious awareness and then enables you to not react in a childish way. And a true person could be, two persons could expose to same difficulty, but they would have totally different reading and different perception. That shows that it is the thing itself doesn't exist independently from its own side. It is totally dependent on what you think it is. You know, what you think it is. Some people will call disloyalty, other people call non-attachment. So, he's such a disloyal person, but he's trying to be not attached to you, that's all. So, you know, when the Buddha left home, people thought he was irresponsible. He was, you know, he destroyed whole kingdom, so to speak. You know, imagine what people thought. But for him, it was a renunciation, because there was no truly existing neglect of his wife and child, because they were in a very comfortable place, you know. They were very comfortable place, and so there was no. But of course, people at that time thought he was his responsible father. But Buddha, for him, it was not disloyalty or not just renunciation. He was practicing renunciation and non-attachment, so that he can actually do some genuine Dharma work by dedicating the rest of his life for the Dharma. At the time, it may seem a bit harsh from other people's point of view, but imagine how would it be? Would it not be harsh on himself, a royal prince living in the jungle? I mean, that's why did he took on that on top himself? Because he hated them? Or no, because he wanted to find the meaning and purpose of living, purpose of being, coming to this world. And so therefore he realized by living in luxury and power and status and comfort, he wasn't growing. He wasn't growing spiritually and emotionally. And therefore he had to make that kind of drastic daring to be different kind of activity upon himself, which is indeed very big sacrifice on himself, physically. Very, very big sacrifice. He had to just expose himself to Mother Nature for the the rest of his life, if you like. So it's just like someone thrown out of the house, living in the street. What would their life be? You know, he deliberately did that in order to cause expose these selfishness and desire and greed and anger and the covetousness and selfishness actually become the real cause of dissatisfaction. He wanted to show the world that is his sane decision. You know, his sane decision. He may have been perceived by others as a irresponsible father, one who deserted the family. Sure, people have all kinds of opinions. If there are 60 ox, there will be 120 horns. It's quite natural. They might even have 123 horns, because if some oxes might have a little extra horn. You can't have just one horn for all the 160 oxes. Like that, everybody's entitled to have their opinion from deluded to enlightenment. And everything in the middle will have. So don't worry about what people think. And don't let yourself become opinionated by your deluded perception. So that's the whole thing. And one becomes cognizant whether my perception is totally by his doing or dependent origination. Now, when you're deluded poor me mentality, you think, oh, why did he do that to me? So that, again, we slip back into that not so sane state of mind. And when you become, it's not entirely what he did, dependent on what I think what he did. Oh, really? Straight away you realize your opinion about him is not because what he did, because what you thought he did. What you thought he did and what he did is quite different. Being able to think like that is quite a sane one. You know, you wouldn't believe how much difference it makes to you when you think that's only what I think, that's only my perception, but what actually may be quite different. When you think like that, there's a miles difference. All of a sudden you say, really? Oh, I can be that wrong. Otherwise, most people are fairly fatalist and fundamentalist, as if what they think is everything is exactly what they think it is. They don't realize that is totally dependent on not only what you think, But there are many other causes and conditions. Not only is what you think is dependent, but also it's impermanent. You're entitled to change your opinions, Even David Jones sell you something, and if you bring your receipt, they go back next day, they'll change, they'll take back. They're allowed to change your mind, but not after 3 days, okay? Not after 3 years. Change your mind in the first few days. Probably David Jones allows you, as long as you keep the receipt. So you're allowed to change your mind. See, Buddha is he says, your thought is impermanent. Don't become hold yourself at ransom by your own opinion. Change your opinion about someone. See, you don't have the same perception of someone, and you're entitled to change as a result of that. You're not suffocated by that attitude. See, that's what it means. Breathe in, breathe out. Means give yourself chance to be cognizant of what you're thinking that is becoming your feeling. What is the feeling that came from your thought is going to cause some emotions that you become like you are totally, you're feeling sad or hurt because you're like standing in a pool of water and like that. You're filled with this emotion. You're drained by the emotion. Why? Because you're not learning to change your thought about it. See, what is sanity about Buddhist insight is please practice change. Practice change, Change your gloves, You can see the nurses giving you injection. They're not only throwing the injection, they're also changing the gloves. We have to change our thought. We have these opinions about someone 10 years ago. We're still holding, that's him. So people are mostly suffering their unchanged opinions about their father or mother or man or other people like that, or Jewish or German or Japanese. People think they are like that. They don't realize, only say maybe now a few decades that in Australia people are changing more. They're buying everything Japanese, But I think in the 1950s, I don't think they were really willing to buy anything Japanese. So now they realize Japanese are not just good kamikaze pilot, but they're also damn good car makers. So now we are buying all these Japanese produce because we changed the Japanese. They're no longer always enemies. They hated their own action. So that's why they became pacifist. They didn't realize what they were doing to others, let alone to themselves. And later, when they had a big atom bomb, then they realized, why did they earn that? Why did it become such a tiny island nation got hit by the biggest bomb in the world? I mean, that's a terrible tragedy. And America did not even hit on the Russians. So they realized, we better not engage in wars. We better not act so ruthless. And people learn from their mistakes. They change. And as a result of that, now they become except a few years ago, they were the world economy number 2. World economy number 2 because they made their corrections. They changed their ways completely. They just turned this this very crusaders. They even invaded China in the early 30s. You remember? They were so feared. They're capable of doing that. But they totally changed their ways, and now they become peaceful. Likewise, we as individuals need to change our thought about our perceptions, our encounters with someone or something in the past, and sane people then change their attitude, no longer hold those views, because people only suffer their views mostly than the actions of the other. That's why Buddha said you need to develop the right view. The right view Buddhist insight constitute the right view that things are dependent, not independent. Things are not does not truly exist. Things are impermanent. If you know these 3 things, then your mind is completely awaken. You wake up to change your attitude about things. So you make things impermanent. You realize things are dependent. You realize things do not inherently exist. Because of that, your mind becomes so much, I would say, elated and filled with the awareness of noticing. And therefore your meditation practice of watching the breath, sitting quietly upright, and learning to count around the breath. It says just do the forward counting for good 10 minutes, and then do another 10 minutes of reverse counting, and sit in the correct posture. When you can change a thought about something, let go the thoughts, feelings about it. Say, I'm not going to subscribe to the thought tomorrow on, today onwards. After this breath, I'm not going to think of him or myself like that as I used to do. That's really bad. My enmity, my ill will comes from bad thought, and I wanted to get rid of it. It's just like changing your thought, changing the sheets, changing your singlet, changing your clothes. Like that, changing those clothes, sheets, people do meticulously on time. You wouldn't believe. Yeah, they change the sheet once a week. They change the clothes regularly every day. Oh, but they don't change the attitude. Yeah, they change the attitude about someone or their mother, or there's some difficult experience away a few years ago. They keep thinking, that's my mother. That's it. We're so fundamentalist that what we think about someone that's them. We don't realize that's colored by your own prejudices, your own ungratefulness, your own self-importance have made you to become author of that feeling, and hence you have earned the enmity by your own poor management of your thought. And then people resort to alcohol. Because they couldn't keep the sanity of mind in a clear thinking, and then they try to mask that problem by alcoholism. They think it's a relax or something. Of course, I'm not saying people shouldn't have alcohol, generally speaking, just before going to bed or whatever their culture seems to think. But generally, it's a lot of people's problem of drinking has doubled their problems. They're already pretty hazy, they're pretty blurred, and on top of that, they mask their problems, and they never try to witness their own thoughts and attitude, how slanted and how crooked, and how self-important, how impatient, how perfectionist, how uncompassionate those very attitudes are. And then that says a lot about the person who has this attitude, and therefore his perceptions. His perceptions are completely obscured by these very afflictions, and hence he couldn't relate to his father or the mother or anybody else, and because they just don't want to change their attitude. They think they're right, but they never show any benefit. They don't seem to be benefited by the attitude. They're suffering the attitude, and that's we call mental patient. Basically, everyone suffers some kind of mental problems, some more so than the others, because they don't realize their attitude needs cleaning. That's what Buddha said. Oh, breathe out, breathe in, watch many rounds of breath, so that you're distracted by the breath, so that your thought does not well up in you as a feeling, and you get drowned by animosity or sadness or worthlessness or ungratefulness and doubt and suspicion. All of these things doesn't take your life over. Why? Because actually you do the many couple of rounds of breath every now and then, you can experience the absence of bad thoughts, absence of bad fear or suspicion or anger or resentment and wrong perception as correct perception. You are no longer allowed that to do, because you're able to own your own. You're actually able to own your own thoughts. But that's my thoughts. Do you like that thought? You don't like that thought. Then change your thought. Oh, am I allowed to change my thought? Oh, good. Thank goodness. People thought changing thought as if their thought is some valid, or because they thought. Most of your thoughts are very, very untested ones. When we buy apple, we choose apple. But we don't want to test our thoughts, whether which thought is worthy of keeping, which thought is no need to listen to. Most people are listening to bad thoughts. Not only their bad thoughts, but even worse thoughts by some deluded friend. And then they have bad thoughts, bad enough bad thoughts, and then somebody else says their bad thoughts. You can see that you realize, the more you communicate with that kind of person, more negativities they seem to feel, and you realize I don't need that kind of exposure. And therefore, you have good reason to distance from such companion, because you're spending time with them is actually only increasing your negativities, which you have plenty of. You don't want. But someone who is able to give you some positive input that actually gives you a way how to cull those thoughts and emotions that are harmful, of course, then you might have a great benefit to having such encounter. So therefore, if we have any Buddhist insight, which means we have a little bit more grown-up, a mature person, and less selfish, more aware of everything is impermanent, and that the mind is more important than our sense perceptions, because 6 senses are very, very insensitive. Sixth sense, the mind itself can test and check those perceptions of visual or auditory or whatever perceptions you have. They're usually colored by your desire, your hope, your clinging, your expectation, your neediness can color those things. But when your mind, which is sixth sense, mental consciousness, is able to check those doors, check the eye door or ear door and so on, and how reliable they are, how unreliable they are, then you will not be looking and listening and paying attention to in a very, very insensitive way, because your senses are wired by your mental consciousness. And therefore, sanity comes when your mind is aware of your own thoughts and how not to become too much convinced by your thought and your perceptions, let alone the object. Objects are never object. They're only a thought and opinion about them. And if you're good at authoring positive thoughts about objects, of course it has a wholesome positive influence on you, but otherwise it's nothing to do with the object. It's your convoluted attitude about the object need to be changed. When you have that kind of conscience, there definitely is a Buddhist insight, because I need to change my attitude about my mother or work or friend or people or whatever, rather than thinking, I don't want them to be like this, I don't want to work with people like that. And then you become so intolerant, so angry, so reactive and so impatient, and when you can't deal with this group and that group, and then what do? And then people go to the bottle again. They rely on the bottle again, and they not doing any of the meditation, As a result of that, they are not emotionally and spiritually growing, and as a result of that, their senses are still very dissatisfied, discontented, because they're craving so much, and they don't get what they're craving. Now they don't get what they want. Previously, also, they didn't get what they want, and now they are least opportunity to get, because they have this aversion, animosity, and as a result of that, they have very little contentment, and they have so much discontentment, so much dissatisfaction, and because they haven't got Dharma. Those who have little Dharma, even if this life have its share of dissatisfaction, it knows how to practice compassion, those who are around them, tolerance with them, forgiveness to them, and by practicing compassion and loving kindness, and often when you are able to practice also equanimity. And equanimity person doesn't say anything, doesn't have many opinions, because he doesn't want to because he's not saying much is equanimity. Equanimity empowers the person to regain their conscience, and not with passive aggression, but seeing the uselessness of wasting such energy. Everything's impermanent. I let it go, and therefore there is not an issue. The person is recovered. He's just got over it. Why? He's grown up. He doesn't need to talk about it because he knows it's bad enough in his head. Doesn't need to be talk about it, because as long as he empties his mind, and then there isn't anything. You couldn't find it anywhere in any form or color or shape in the mind itself, let alone the mind being a container and thing itself taking some big space of your mind that is nothing. So you can't say my mind is full of this problem. Where is the mind? First, search the poor mind. We can rescue your mind. We can send the mind to a garage or somewhere. Then it will be emptied out, and then you bring back the mind that is not so occupied. It's only a thought, just a thought, And what is the thought's worth? It's just like a bubble. It just says everything is impermanent, including your thought, opinions about it. And so don't give so much credence to thinking my thought, my attitude, Why is your dog so important? Yeah, that's right. Why is that dog not so important in the street? It's not because they're dogs, because whose dog it is. See, it's not because you really love dog, but because you're so concerned about me and mine, or me or my cat, or me or my horse. How about other people's horse? So it's all about the person rather than the thing. And it's good to be able to recognize it's one's own self-importance that usually is the center of the suffering and its causes. And that's why when you meditate, you can witness this very clearly, and then you say, and then you develop self-pity. I wasted all that hours or days thinking it's someone else's doing to me. This is not really the case. And then you also see other people also most of the time in similar situation as all deluded people. And then you have the moral authority to practice compassion when others are not within your expectation. They're not quite meeting your expectation. You actually have the authority to practice compassion and tolerance and equanimity without any resentment and bitterness and angst against it. And that is really sanity. That's causes of true sanity. And now you don't even have to tell people that that's Buddhist, Practicing Dharma itself is a private thing, but how it outwardly shows is amazing growth and humanity and tolerance, peace, kindness, self-control. All of these things becomes the gift of the practice. So with this, we'll stop here. Thank you, everybody, for joining us, everyone, both here in Zoom as well in Facebook audience. Thank you very much, everyone. Take care. I'll see you next week. We'll do the short dedication merits. So any small openings, small reckonings that your mind picked that up, you should say, I'm going to use that. I'm going to address that. And may that also have some ripple effect to those around each and every one of us. And then ripple effect will benefit everyone in a larger scale with this certitude. Whatever merit I have, may hope because I love to the Maya Natij courage manjujin yod asama trabajadila follow de zambo aja de ge de mere me de sala bo di che da te ba na ya da za has been bo me relive da generation. Thank you, everyone. Bye, everyone.